what are some of the things that you're seeing, some of the changes that you're seeing in the market, as far as, how buying patterns are changing, how AI is changing things, and how do you see books being that thing that allows us to actually safeguard against those challenges?
AI is an accelerant, an exponential accelerant to this trend, but we were already seeing this trend coming from the internet because all of a sudden we took down all the geographic barriers to trading with people. Information was scarce, wisdom was scarce, and you had all of these geographic barriers. You couldn't do business with people outside of your local community for the most part. Well, fast forward to today, and because of the internet, the geographic barriers are gone. And now, because of AI, we have accelerated the removal of the barriers to knowledge. And that is really bad news for the average business. If you're the consultant, you're a management consultant, you say, I do management consulting things. And you sort of describe yourself as the category that you're swimming within, you have a problem because I can tell you all day today, I have been doing management consulting level work with Claude Code. And we basically in the last 4 days built out a new offering and a new business on, attached to our business and launched it today. And, and so that's available now. So you get a level of speed and a depth of knowledge that you couldn't get before. So how does all this play into writing a book? Well, the way to survive this is to step out of being average and define your own category where you've created it. You have to create your own positioning that makes you not average. If all you're doing is describing yourself as, hey, I'm a business lawyer, or I'm a CPA that specializes in audits, like that isn't going to get anybody attracted to come to you, and it's going to more and more get you replaced by the machines.
I'm really excited to have Steve Gordon here today on our live stream. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hey, Mandy, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And Steve and I, we go way back. We've known each other at least a decade, right?
At least, yeah.
And Steve's wonderful company, $1 Million Author, also helped me publish The Hands-Off CEO. You guys are behind that. So if you haven't had a chance to read that, you can see their handiwork there.
Fantastic book. Get a copy if you want to exit your business or at least build a business that you enjoy owning. Read the book.
Thank you for that. That shout out. So, I have so many questions. I want to dive into, but what our topic today is on writing the category of one book that allows you to really be in that category that AI can't replace you. So I'd love to hear, what are some of the things that you're seeing, some of the changes that you're seeing in the market, as far as, how buying patterns are changing, how AI is changing things, and how do you see books being that thing that allows us to actually safeguard against those challenges?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, it's a great question. And it's something that I've been studying closely now for, 3 or 4 years since AI really, came on the scene. And it's not new. It's not unique to AI. AI is an accelerant, an exponential accelerant to this trend, but we were already seeing this trend coming from the internet because all of a sudden we took down all the geographic barriers to trading with people, and so if you think about what it was like to be in a business where you were selling your expertise, your ideas, some type of professional service type business 100 years ago. Well, you might have been the only lawyer or doctor or accountant or consultant in town that had your expertise. And at that point, the competitive advantage was to keep that expertise locked in your head, because information was scarce, wisdom was scarce, and you had all of these geographic barriers. You couldn't do business with people outside of your local community for the most part. Well, fast forward to today, and because of the internet, the geographic barriers are gone. And now, because of AI, we have accelerated the removal of the barriers to knowledge. And that is really bad news for the average business. And you've got a decision to make right now. Are you going to be an average business? And by average business, I mean, if you're the consultant, you're a management consultant, you say, I do management consulting things. And you sort of describe yourself as the category that you're swimming within, you have a problem, because I can tell you all day today, I have been doing management consulting level work with Claude Code. And we basically, in the last 4 days, built out a new offering and a new business attached to our business, and launched it today. And, and so that's available now. So you get a level of speed and a depth of knowledge that you couldn't get before. So how does all this play into writing a book? Well, the way to survive this is to step out of being average and define your own category where you've created it. It's based on your IP. And we can talk about some specifics about how do you make your IP unique and stand out, but you have to create your own positioning that makes you not average. If all you're doing is describing yourself as, hey, I'm a business lawyer, or I'm a CPA that specializes in audits, like that isn't going to get anybody attracted to come to you, and it's going to more and more get you replaced by the machines, and we don't want that.
Yeah, great answer. I appreciate that. And if I may, because you're talking about how do you make sure that your company is not just average? Because there's a lot of companies out there that do book writing and done for you book writing. And one of the things that I see that makes you guys stand out is that I know you didn't come from just a book publishing background. You came from a marketing background. Actually, before that, you were an engineer. And I have watched your approach to marketing that is very systematic, because you're an engineer that engineers marketing systems. That's very different. And this is probably why we've been friends for a while, because we kind of think in similar ways this way and actually make things happen, right? And that's a very different perspective to say, hey, how do we be able to generate new business out of a book, as opposed to here's how we write a nice book and it makes you feel really good and maybe it'll generate new business. But you actually have a real strategy around that.
Absolutely. And there's two parts to that strategy. And you alluded to one of them, which is the marketing of it to generate business. And we've got some great systems around that. And those systems are part of what positions us differently than others in the market that you might look at and consider competitors. What we've done is we've gone through every part of our process. And there are things that we do that we think are pretty unique, but we don't just keep that hidden. We put them in my own book and we talk about them. And so we have something called the better than ghostwriting process. We don't just do ghostwriting. We have the better than ghostwriting process, and that's positioned uniquely in the marketplace. We don't just launch books. We use the inverted viral launch, which is a technique that we developed and only we have, and throughout our system, we have those sorts of things. I'm not telling you that to brag about our system, but as an example of how, we're in a business that AI should run us over, right? Yeah. Because the first thing AI did when it woke up was write, and still not doing it really well, but it's getting better, and it'll become good enough to really write strong books. But that's not everything that a business person needs to be able to be successful. And so what we've done is we've positioned all of those other things that AI can't do very uniquely in the marketplace. And that's the way you want to think about your own business. And that's the other reason to write a book is that, when you wrote The Hands-Off CEO, I know you had the name before that, but you put the book behind it, and in putting the book behind it, you revealed something that was secret before, right? And it might not have been secret intentionally, but most businesses keep their best stuff under wraps unintentionally. It's the stuff that people hire them for. It's the great thinking that they have. I mean, the 5 exits model that you have in the hands-off CEO, I'm still blown away by the clarity of that and how it walks, a founder through this logical process to get free. And by taking that, naming it the way that you've named it, you're now separate from all of the coaches and consultants and advisors who might do similar things, but no one else has the hands-off CEO process. No one else has the 5 exits and all of the other pieces that you wrapped into it. And it's that kind of positioning in the marketplace that is what the winning firms are going to do as we approach this split that's being caused by AI. And the losing firms are going to get completely commoditized and likely go away.
Yeah, I love that. You know what? And one of the things I just want to share what I've experienced from having a book and what it's been, I mean, I wrote this book 5 times. Honestly, I wrote it 5 times before I brought this to you. And I said, finally, Steve, like, help me. I just can't get this to a good enough level that I actually felt good getting it out there. And I think that's the part is like, yes, this was before AI when I published this, but like nowadays, could I just go and roll a book out with AI? Yeah, but how do I know if it's actually good? How do I know if it's actually has good strategic call to actions that's going to lead it to the next step? How do I, like, there's so many decisions that need to be made on that. And I think that's where what you're doing is really important, because it's one thing to have a book, but it's a whole other thing to have a book that's actually going to strategically position you and be able to lead your company to add millions of dollars of sales. Those 2 different things.
Yeah, completely. And I think that's the way, if you're watching this, you need to be thinking about your business in terms of how do I position myself uniquely in the marketplace? And that's kind of one end of the way to think about a book. Then the other end is much more tactical. And that's how do I leverage that book now that I've gotten my best thinking out of my head? Because right now you walk around and you're probably networking, or you're going and delivering speeches, you're doing things where you have to show up and sell people on your ideas. And the minute that you package them into a book and you name them and you're able to get them out into the world without you being there, now your ideas go out and they do the selling for you. They sell the world on you. And that gives you a tremendous piece of leverage in your business development. And so you want to be thinking about, okay, I want to position myself uniquely over here, and I want to create this great tool that gives me leverage and starts to disconnect this founder dependence that most of us have in business development, because that's going to give you a better life and also going to make your firm something that's sellable down the road.
Ooh, this is juicy. We're getting into a juicy topic here. And I want to share with some of the things that we've done, exactly what you're talking about, building on your system too. So case in point, one of what you're talking about is letting the book do the selling. I remember there was a little while back, we had a prospect come in and they were interested in our services. And I didn't even have one single call with him. They were already closed. Here's how I did it. I took a screenshot of, like, it was actually a phone screenshot of like the title page on the book, because that's what I had in front of me. And I got, like, on your phone you can draw things on the screen capture. So I just like circled a couple chapters and I did a quick like Loom video on my phone. And I said, hey, you want to focus on chapters 4, 5, and like 3 and 4 and 5, that talk, you have this problem. And it says, like, every one of those problems that they said, I said, look at this chapter of that problem, this chapter of that problem. And it was strategically laid out to overcome those objections and educate them on that. So actually it was a pretty high ticket opportunity. And I actually sold that without a sales call. That's not a typical thing, but like, having a book gives you the ability to do that. And it was just a completely different experience. I remember that was shortly after I published a book, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. It was like, and I think they were blown away too, because it like laid out exactly their biggest concerns. It was like, I read their mind.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised by that. I hear those kinds of stories all the time from our clients, and it's funny. I'm sitting here smiling, listening to you because I used to do the same thing with my books. I've had many clients do this. We called it the sticky note trick. Same thing
Yeah.
you did. You just updated it, but we used to send out physical copies, and say, read this first, read this second, and put them into the book right on the things that we thought were relevant for that person, and it just works like a charm. And you just did that with a Loom video,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is super smart.
Well, yeah, and that was because they had the appointment already set, and all I had time was to send them a digital copy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
brilliant.
I'm all for physical copies. I'm a physical copy girl. I know you get texts from me every now and then to show like the stacks of like referrals that we've gotten, introductions really from that we're sending out books to, and it's actually one of our top lead sources. Is like when we have partnerships and we have past clients. Like some weeks I'll have like 10 books to send out, and then we have a whole process that we've built to be nurturing them from like a warm contact into having interest in one of our programs. But it takes a process, and that's something that we've developed. We can talk more about that too if it's interesting. But I'd like to hear. I'd like for you to share that process if you're open to it, because it's like I remember you sharing this process like 10 years ago for how to be able to get referrals, and it's a very different way than most people are approaching referrals, and I think it's freaking genius.
Well, thank you. And I don't know that it's genius, but it does work. And I discovered this way back in 2012, and I was teaching these classes on referral marketing for a bunch of business owners here locally where I live in Tallahassee, Florida. And I had about 300 business owners come through over the summer months to these workshops that I was doing. And I went and met with them 6 months later and asked them, what changed. And in these workshops, we were teaching all the usual stuff you've heard about referrals. Ask everybody follow up with the people, until they buy or die, all the like standard sort of stuff, nothing surprising. And all of these business owners, when I met with them, said, yeah, there was such a great workshop. I mean, we got like 5-star reviews on the presentation of it. And 6 months later, I'm meeting with a handful of them, and none of them had done anything. They hadn't implemented any of it. And all of them admitted they really needed it. And that to me got my antennas up. Like, okay, these are smart people. They know they need to do this. They see how to execute it because we taught them how to do it in a relatively straightforward way. What is the disconnect? And as I got deeper and deeper into it, really, it was almost a confidence thing. They were afraid to go and kill the golden goose. So they had all these clients that were paying them good money, and they didn't want to bug the clients begging for introductions the old way. And I looked around, and I was doing direct response marketing at the time. And in direct response marketing, we have this concept called a lead generator or a lead magnet. And I thought, well, why don't we just do that? Give them something to give away. And we experimented with a lot of different things, and finally figured out that a book was the very best tool. In fact, and then I wrote my first book, Unstoppable Referrals, on this whole strategy. And basically what you do is what Mandy's sort of alluded to is when you have everything in a book, you have a very easy and low risk way for people to introduce you to everyone that they know. When you don't have a book, you have a very risky and expensive way for them to introduce you, because they're going to introduce you and say, oh, you should talk to Mandy. She can really, help you scale your business. Why don't you meet with her? Okay, well, a meeting's an expensive thing. Cost me time, cost Mandy time. And because it's set up in the way, that we set these things up, the assumption is that there's sales that are going to happen here. Maybe they don't happen in that meeting, but that's the direction we're going. So it's a form of a sales meeting. I don't want to go to a sales meeting. I sell for a living. I don't want to go to a sales meeting unless I'm doing the selling, right? So there's all this resistance to it. But if I come to you and say, hey, Mandy, I just wrote a book. In fact, I'm working on a new book on AI. I've got a new AI book coming out. When it comes out, would it be interesting to you if we sat down and brainstormed who in your network we could give a copy of this book to as a gift from you. I think they'd really like it. What do you say? And then of course, Mandy's going to be like, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that, and gives value to, to her network. And so instead of making referrals a taking exercise, we turned it into a giving exercise that really makes the person giving the referral look like a hero because they're giving a valuable resource in a book.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. And if this works, like it's like I said, I send you little pictures every now and then.
I know every couple of months, and Mandy's like, yeah, we just got a whole bunch more referrals from my book, which is awesome.
Yeah, I just thought it would be just fun to see the stacks, And you know what? We've actually built on this process because it's a good process, and we tell our clients about this process all the time, and we always credit you, of course, Steve. And but one of the things that we find is that a lot of people, they don't know how to actually take that. They're used to having a referral with someone who's like, yes, I'm ready to buy from you right now. Like that's what they see as a referral. And it's just like, that's just not how it works. And sometimes you get lucky, but it's like, I actually listed out all the variables that needed to be in place for that to happen. And there were seriously like 20. There were like 20 things that had to be in place for that, like, introduction to result in business like within like 2 to 4 weeks, like almost an impossible situation, really. So the fact that people get referrals that way is a Christmas miracle, right?
It is.
So what we do instead is we look at it. How do we have this be top of funnel and like work it down in a way that actually builds a real relationship, and so that like when we have partners together that we would refer back and forth, that they can feel really good that they're going to hear back from them. They're like, oh my gosh, that book was so amazing. Thank you so much for making that introduction to Mandy. And like, that's what we hear from some of our partners, and they love our book. And like we have a lot of clients that come to us from them. And it's a very good synergistic thing that fits together with what they're doing. So what we have done on this is we've built a whole nurturing process. I mean, there's attract, there's nurture, and then there's close. A lot of people spend time on the attract, which is, generating new business, like new referrals could be one of them. It could be LinkedIn ads, could be a lot of different things, right? And then close, it's like jumping in, like nobody wants to jump on a sales call until they're like, I want to be sold to. Like then they want, like you want to be having that conversation then. But what do you do in the nurture? Like most people do nothing. They just sit around and wait, and they're wondering why. So what we found is that we look at, we've engineered for like, how do we build a relationship this way? Well, we have a touch point for connecting on LinkedIn. We have ways that a touch point for how do you make an offer for like a conversation that would be high value? How do you do that in a way that doesn't sound all slimy? And so we have looked and say, what are the touch points here? Like, what are some events that we do? We do this executive briefing that maybe some people who are here have listened. We'll put the link in the chat in the notes if anyone wants to follow it. I'm sure you have some too, Steve. But it like nurtures and gives more information, and especially if they don't have time to read the book. Lots of our clients don't have time to read a book. They didn't read the book until they decided to work with us. Was the book still valuable? Yep, it was. Like skimming it was good enough. So we built an entire process around this to be able to manage through sales pipeline. And actually, we then something we've done recently, Steve, which might be interesting, where we actually have. On my team, my EA went and built, she saw all these best practices that we were using, and she built an entire system to train other EAs on how to do this. Because a sales the CEO's time, 60 to 80% of the time is spent on sales activities. So how do you be able to expand their time without having to actually hire another salesperson? Well, you hire a sales admin. You hire a really killer EA and you train them on how to actually manage this process. And so we have taken this process and applied it to what you teach, Steve. So
that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
And that's always the hardest part in anything, is getting it into a system that can run without the founder. Because if it's founder dependent, you're in trouble. You're just not going to
totally
scale, and you're going to start it and you're going to stop it. And I know that because I've been doing this now for 30 plus years through two businesses. And I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs at this point. And the the starting up with a good idea and then getting busy and overwhelmed and dropping it is sort of the par for the course with business owners.
Yeah.
And that's not your fault. That you're not the one who should be doing these things.
No. And in an ideal world, you have a manager who's coming in and taking care of all this, and then they're hiring all the staff around you. That's in an ideal world, and we do that actually. But one of the things that we find is that it's like it's not. I mean, it's a considerable investment to go and hire and develop a manager. I mean, it's way cheaper than hiring the way most people do. We could do it for about half the price that most people do, but it takes like 6 months to get all that up in place. I mean, so it's just like it takes something. So what we have discovered is that if we can first just get that EA in place, free up 10 hours per week for the CEO, and then on top of that, go and like make sure they don't miss any sales opportunities. Are you going to make one more sale a year off that? Probably maybe two. So you're looking at, a couple like, $50,000 to $100,000 a year, maybe extra just from one role like that. And then it's like, okay, now we can put a manager in place now that we have the systematized. So it's one thing that we're starting to think a little bit different. As I make some updates to the Hands-Off CEO book, I'll probably be adding this as like exit zero, like getting out of the sales admin. It's so critical. And I see too many CEOs just go and say, well, I'm just going to go hire a salesperson. And now you just cut your margins because you have like this prima donna coming in and just like skimming the cream off the top for all the work that you've done, right? With these big fat commissions, and they may not even work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm keenly aware that I got very, very lucky with my first salesperson hire, and
nice.
And it was just a home run from the beginning. But I know that was it was well-planned luck. Let's put it like that.
Yes. I was going to say, I'm sure it was well-planned knowing you, but it's rolling the dice, and yeah. I am all for hiring salespeople, but they're not so good at details. So if you can have someone behind them actually taking care of those details, everybody gets a little bit better results from it.
Absolutely. Yep.
So anyway, I want to hear what am I not asking about? What am I not asking about books that we need to be aware of right now with how things are changing, or how we need to be utilizing them to grow companies?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked about the positioning aspect of it. I think that's the most critical thing. If you're not thinking about how you're going to position yourself uniquely in a category that you create, and I use that word create very intentionally. You're going to create it out of whole cloth, and there are plenty of opportunities in the marketplace to do that. That's really critical. So that's number one. But two, the advantage that companies have when they create sort of the book, their Bible about this is, how we do things. This is our unique approach. Not only does it accomplish that positioning, but it documents your point of view. We call it your opinionated worldview in a really strong way. And I see a lot of people who are just trying to get a book out to get a book out, and that'll get you a little ways. But if you really take the time, and it doesn't need to take a lot of time, it can be done in 90 days. But if you take the time to clearly articulate and think through your view of how you do what you do and who you do it for and why your way is different and superior, and articulate that in a way that AI is not going to be able to do because it lives mostly in your head. If you can get that down on the page and publish that in a book, now you have the very best tool to leverage AI going forward, because you've got the world's best training document in your IP that you can give it and train it to now multiply your ability to take that message out to the world. So I'll just give you an example of how I work now. So I've written 5 books, but some of them are older and they're not as relevant anymore. And my latest book, The $1 Million Book, is still very relevant. And and my new book, which is all about teaming with AI, is very, very relevant. And so I've fed it even early drafts of that, and I use that now as my shortcut for creating our content. So I publish a newsletter every Saturday called the Freedom Firm Insider. And it pulls from all of that IP that I've worked so hard to create to give me a really good first draft in minutes that used to take me a day to get to. And so it's like I have a junior copywriter, but I couldn't get there without having the right inputs. All of our social media now is created that way, where it's created and I mean, we've tuned it to the point that now it's almost edit free, not completely edit free, but almost edit free with AI. And and we're doing some advanced things, not just plain chat GPT. We're slowly starting to teach some of our clients how to do it. But you've got to have that input document. And businesses that don't have the input document, and it doesn't have to be a book, but I've found that a book is best because writing a book forces you to create a coherent and logical, display of your thinking. That now you've got such an advantage. You can just be so much faster than everybody else in the marketplace.
I completely agree. I think that's a really good point about how we train our language models so that we can actually leverage that. And what I see a book is really like this emotional arc that you take your prospects through to be able to help them see what's possible. And I help companies do this with the selling decks and things like this. So like this is something that I'm actually good at, but I spent 5 years trying to do this on my own with a book. I just couldn't do it for myself in a way that I felt confident about. And I don't think that AI may have made me feel like I was making more progress, but AI can also just make a whole lot of clutter. And it takes just as much time to go through it unless you have the right inputs. Yeah. So I would highly recommend anyone who's listening and who's looking at, I want to be able to elevate my position. I want to be able to I want to have something that's going to leverage all of my knowledge and expertise so that I can show up in a way that I am a category one. I encourage them to listen. Check out Steve's book. Is Unstop $1 Million Author. Is that the copy of the book?
The book.
Where can you find that?
The $1 Million Book. You can get it on our website. Okay. We actually will give it to you absolutely free. Go to $1millionauthor.io and click on the book link at the top, or you can go to get.themilliondollarbook.org. Nice.
Great. Well, that's a great gift. Thank you so much for sharing that. And where else can people find you, Steve?
So I'm on LinkedIn and publishing lots of these types of insights on LinkedIn. So you can look me up there, Steve Gordon on LinkedIn, and check out our YouTube channel as well. We've ramped up the volume of videos that we're putting out there. And again, trying to share some of this thinking about what's coming, over these next few years with folks there on YouTube. So you can find me at Steve Gordon Official on YouTube.
Great. Thanks. And for anyone else listening, if you would like to look at how do you be able to create offers that will drive a higher price point, be able to get twice the budget, 3 times the budget in a way where you're so confident making those sales, you can go to handsoffceo.com/briefing to join our next executive briefing, where you will get live coaching from me on exactly what's missing from your offers to be able to create a multiple $1 million company that is profitable and that is lean and that can run and grow without you. So, Steve, thank you so much for being here today. It was really a pleasure to interview you here again. Thanks,
Mandi. It's been fun. Good to see you.